This is AM Agenda with Kieran Gilbert.
Today marks 12 months since Malcolm Turnbull toppled Tony Abbott for the Liberal leadership and the Prime Ministership. On that day, a year ago, among other things, he committed, Mr Turnbull, to maintaining the coalition policy on same-sex marriage. That is to have a plebiscite on it. They've announced the details yesterday. That legislation will be introduced today, a year on from him becoming the Liberal leader and Prime Minister. Coming up this morning, Ed Husic, Karen Andrews. To discuss that first, though, I'm joined by Cabinet Minister Josh Frydenberg. A lot to talk about in your area of responsibility as Environment Minister. But first of all, 12 months on, your reflections on the year of Malcolm Turnbull Prime Minister, the result, the election result and so on, not exactly what people had hoped for.
Well, a win's a win, and Malcolm Turnbull can look back on that election and say, well, we beat Bill Shorten, and now we have a majority in the House of Representatives and getting on with the job of governing. Now, I think he's had a very strong year, the Prime Minister, particularly on the economic front. GDP growth is 3.3%. It's the envy of the developed world. In the last 12 months, we've created more than 200,000 new jobs. That's 3 times the rate of job creation in the last 12 months of the Labor
Do you concede more needs to be done, though, to make the case, to articulate what your economic and your governing plan is?
Well, you've always got to make the case to the public about the reasons for your decisions and then to take those decisions forward in the Parliament, despite not having the majority in the upper house.
So in a nutshell, a year on, what does the Turnbull government stand for?
Well, jobs, growth, innovation, science, the role of free enterprise, the power of the individual, national security, infrastructure spending, the list goes on. But the numbers, the statistics tell a very powerful story. I mean, youth unemployment is today lower than it was 12 months ago. Female workforce participation is at record highs. We've seen 3.3% GDP growth, but also we've seen business confidence 9% higher than it was a year ago.
All right. Well, Peter Credlin, the former Chief of Staff to Tony Abbott, says that he would have won, and by more than just one seat. She has no doubt about that in her view last night on Sky News. What's your take on that? Do you agree with her?
Well, look, the party room took a decision a year ago. Malcolm Turnbull was chosen by the party room to become the Prime Minister. I think he's had a very strong year. As a cabinet, as a parliamentary team, we're behind him.
Is everyone?
Well, I hope everyone is, absolutely. I can only speak for the cabinet where I sit, but also I've seen in the party room. I mean, yesterday we had some very delicate issues to discuss with the plebiscite, and there was very strong support for the Prime Minister's position. And of course, yesterday was the big announcement around $6.3 billion worth of agreed savings. And Matthias Cormann and Scott Morrison can take a lot of credit for that, and that will send a very positive signal to the International Credit Agency. So we're getting on with the job of paying back Labor's debt. We're getting on with the job of growing the economy. On the science and innovation front, there's been some real successes there. Would you believe that R&D spending, innovation science, is now for the first time above $10 billion? And Greg Hunt has overseen a 3.5% increase in that over the last year. So there's a great...
All right, let me ask you about the same-sex marriage plebiscite, because that's going to be introduced today, the legislation. It looks like it's not going to get through, but as I mentioned at the start of the program, that was something Malcolm Turnbull committed to before he even won the ballot. That was something he was telling your colleagues on the day of the spill last year. I won't change the position on same-sex marriage. It will be a plebiscite, but it looks like it's not going to be fulfilled in the Parliament. Is that going to be a loss, a setback for him?
Well, Kieran, this is a moment of truth for Bill Shorten, because one, he actually supported a plebiscite in his own words. He said he was very relaxed about having a plebiscite. Second, we know he's a supporter of gay marriage, so am I. Now, if he wants to see that happen as soon as possible, the way forward is through a plebiscite.
But he's not Prime Minister. Malcolm Turnbull is.
Exactly.
If he can't deliver on that commitment, is that a setback for him and for the cause? It obviously is for the cause.
But you just put your finger on it. He's not the Prime Minister. He's just lost an election. This was our policy that we took to the election and won. So now's the time for him to see the implementation of our stated policy on an important area of interest to many Australians.
Now, as Environment Minister, one of your areas of responsibility was the focus of cuts for the $6.3 billion savings bill. There's been a deal done with Labor. Can you clear up for us some confusion around where the money's coming from? Because $800 million from the Clean Energy Innovation Fund, which is essentially loans, is going to go into the ARENA setup, which is grants.
Correct.
Loans are an asset, grants are appropriation, are spending. How do you account for the two?
It's very clear to think of it like this. The $10 billion Clean Energy Finance Corporation was established to make loans. And so the government wanted that money back in time, and also we set up a Clean Energy Innovation Fund within that $10 billion. So it was the same envelope of money.
Yeah, they're loans.
And that was to be loans, and that was to replace ARENA, or the work that ARENA was doing. Because we weren't abolishing ARENA, we were getting ARENA to co-manage that with the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. Now that we have agreed with the Labor Party to restore the grants as opposed to the loans, that $10 billion stays the same, the envelope doesn't change, but now $800 million gets put back into ARENA that otherwise wouldn't have been the case.
Okay, so
it's 800 plus 10 billion.
And so it's $800 million plus 10 billion. And where is that 800 million coming from? Is that you're just not going to make those cuts?
Correct, because what has happened is even though the Labor Party agreed to that, by the way, during the election campaign, they booked those savings. They said, you know, to everyone, have a look here. We've agreed with the government on those savings. What they have agreed to now, in discussions with Matthias Cormann, is for some other savings elsewhere
to cover it.
To cover.
So you're not taking essentially,
We're not taking
$800 million from a loan package into grants, because that obviously wouldn't.
The loan money stays there in the Clean Energy Finance Corporation.
It's not one for one.
It's not. It's not. It's $800 million being restored that otherwise would have been taken out.
Okay, and it's going to be covered elsewhere. Let me ask you about Macquarie Island. This is in the Antarctic Division. I know that Will Hodgman, the Tasmanian Premier, is not happy with the closing down of this, and it's basically going to be wrapped up on Macquarie Island. It's the front page of the Mercury this morning. Both sides of politics in Tasmania are concerned about it. What's your message as the responsible minister to them?
Well, the head of the Antarctic Division has said the following. One, there are no job cuts. So the dozen or so people who have been based there will be redeployed to other roles within the Antarctic Division. Secondly, there are no savings from this. That will be booked to the bottom line. The $3 to $4 million annually that will come from otherwise would have been used as on a permanent presence will be used more broadly within the Antarctic Division. So we're not taking any money out of science research. In fact, as a government, we've put a lot more money.
But for Tasmania, what are the implications?
Well, and then thirdly, for Tasmania, for the country, the research that is being done on Macquarie Island will continue to be the case. The majority of the research is actually done in the summer, and that's what Nick Gales, the head of Antarctic Division, has told me, that will continue. There'll be a series of field huts, and the work will obviously continue to be provided to the government and its related agencies.
Environment Minister Josh Frydenberg, thanks as always, appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
A quick break, back in just a moment with Labor's Ed Husic and Liberal Party's Karen Andrews.